Today we're going to configure infrastructure for an e-commerce site. Earlier I created an IAM role that we're going to set as the default for our staging environment. In Massdriver, a project such as e-commerce site is the boundary that enforces parity across all of your environments, much like you would get from using an IAC tool like Ansible or Terraform. In our sidebar here we have a number of things that we can add to our canvas, artifacts and bundles. We're going to start with some bundles, and I'm going to add a VPC bundle, and I'm going to give it a name VPC. Now, slugs in Massdriver are a way of enforcing naming conventions across all of your projects, environments, and resources. I'm going to go ahead and configure this VPC. Okay, our deployment is in queued. We should see resources begin to be completed here in just a moment. When we were filling out that form, Massdriver only prompted for two questions, the region and the CIDR block. The VPC that Massdriver creates is a best practice reference architecture specified by AWS, creating public, private, and internal subnets, and allocating additional ranges for future expansion. Okay, it looks like our VPC is almost done being provisioned. We should see the indicator light turn green here in just a moment. There it goes. And you can click on this history button to see a deployment history of any of the resources you have in Massdriver. Switching over to the AWS console, we can see the VPC we created with our naming convention. Let's add some more infrastructure. We'll go ahead and start with the Kubernetes EKS cluster. We'll name this compute. And just a reminder, the manifest will be used in the naming convention for this cluster and all of its resources. Let's also add a serverless Postgres instance. We'll name this database. Click Submit, and let's connect some infrastructure. Massdriver's connection system is type aware, eliminating an entire class of misconfiguration errors that are possible using the console, Terraform, Ansible, and other IAC tools. Let's configure this cluster. We'll select from a preset called Development. Massdriver ships a couple of presets with each of our bundles that we've seen work well in the wild. You can change any of these presets to fit your use cases, and we'll change this to 3 as the maximum size for this auto-scaling group. You can see our cluster is in queued. This can take up to 20 minutes to deploy an EKS cluster, so we'll go ahead and start configuring this Postgres serverless database. Let's select the development preset for this database as well. We'll name the database MyAppStaging, and you can see that the minimum and maximum capacities for Aurora have been set to 2 units. Auto pause is enabled for 5 minutes with no traffic, and we also have skip final snapshot enabled and deletion protection disabled for this development environment. Okay, it looks like this environment is just about provisioned, and there goes the compute cluster. Let's go ahead and configure a production environment so we can see how Massdriver enforces parity across your environments. I'm going to click the plus button next to staging and create a production target for US West 2. Give my environment a unique slug, click Submit, and we should see all the resources that we created in our staging environment also in production. These have not been provisioned to the cloud yet, but Massdriver does enforce parity around its projects. Anything you add to staging or prod will appear in the other and across all the other targets in your project. Projects are really the boundaries for enforcing parity. Now, the scale for each of these can vary from environment to environment. Rather than deploy each of these, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through creating production-like workloads. Finding out why it worked in staging can always be difficult. With Massdriver, rather than look through hundreds of lines of Terraform or click through the AWS Cloud Console, you can take 2 different environments and quickly compare them and see all the parameters that are different between staging and production, or maybe production US East and production US West.